I had never been more aware of the weight of my name than that night beneath the vaulted ceilings of the Jewel House, where even the silence smelled of power. Lady Catherine Thornfield, daughter of Lord Reginald Thornfield, patron of half the institutions in London, was expected to smile, nod, and never step out of line. I had worn my stiffest corset, the one that made it difficult to breathe, and yet, as the evening dragged on with toasts to the crown and tiresome aristocrats boasting about empire and legacy, it wasn't the fabric that choked me. It was the crushing boredom. I had slipped away, just for a moment, down the servant stairs, through corridors dusted with the scent of stone and old secrets, until I reached the gallery that held the crown jewels. It was closed to visitors at this hour, but I had charms and I had curiosity. I told myself I only wanted a moment of quiet, a taste of rebellion. What I didn't expect was her. She didn't belong to this world, at least not in the way the rest of us did. While I had grown up locked inside it, she had clearly spent her life learning how to slip through its cracks. She was already in the gallery when I entered, crouched in the shadows, gloved hands hovering inches from the imperial crown. Every instinct screamed to run or shout or call the guards, but I did none of those things. I watched her instead. She moved like moonlight across water, silent, smooth, breathtaking. And then she saw me. Our eyes locked across the vault, and for the first time in my life, someone looked at me not as a symbol, a daughter, a future wife, but like I was something rare, something valuable. I should have screamed. I didn't. She straightened slowly, and for a moment, neither of us said a word. Then she smirked. "You're not supposed to be here," she said, voice hushed but sharp with amusement. "Neither are you," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, even as my heart raced like it never had at a debutante ball. "And yet here we are." She stepped closer, shadows clinging to her like a second skin. Her hair was tucked under a black cap, her lips curved with mischief, and her eyes, God, her eyes were like stormlight. "Are you going to turn me in, Lady Thornfield?" The way she said my name, all silk and challenge, made something tighten in my chest. "Are you going to steal it?" I countered. Her gaze drifted briefly to the crown, then back to me. "I was," she admitted, as casually as if she were discussing the weather. "But now," she tilted her head, "you've made things rather interesting." I should have backed away. I should have raised the alarm. Instead, I stepped forward. "Who are you?" She gave a small bow, theatrical and irreverent.
"Amy."
"And you, my lady, are either very brave or very foolish." "Possibly both," I whispered. She laughed, low and genuine. "I don't usually like being interrupted," she said, "but I might make an exception tonight." Before I could reply, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Real ones.
"Guards."
Her expression sharpened. "Well, this has been lovely, but I must vanish now." I grabbed her wrist without thinking.
"Wait."
"They'll catch you that way. I know a passage." I don't know why I did it. Maybe because no one had ever made my blood feel like lightning before. Maybe because she looked at me like I wasn't just another cage in a silk dress. But I led her, past the steel doors, through a hidden panel I'd once discovered in childish exploration, down a narrow passage that smelled of old stone and secrets. We didn't stop until we were in the shadows of the outer wall. She turned to me then, breathless, her face inches from mine. "You just saved me," she murmured. "Or maybe you saved yourself," I replied. "Maybe I did." Her hand brushed my jaw. "Be careful, Lady Thornfield. Playing with thieves is dangerous." "So is being one," I said. She smiled like I had passed a test. Then she slipped into the darkness, leaving only the scent of rain and wildness in her wake. I stood there long after she'd gone, heart pounding, lips tingling where she hadn't kissed me, but almost had. I had come looking for silence. Instead, I found a storm, and I knew, without understanding why, that this was only the beginning. 3 days. That's how long it took for my life to unravel. 3 days since I'd seen her vanish into the London fog, leaving me with a racing heart and trembling fingers. 3 days in which every whispered conversation, Every forced smile at dinner, every glance from my father's political acquaintances became unbearable. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Amy. A name that tasted like danger and freedom in equal measure. The memory of her fingers grazing my jaw haunted me more than the echo of her voice warning me to be careful. But how could I be when everything in me burned to see her again? I began slipping out at night. First it was walks through the garden, then through the back gate, then the carriage house, where I borrowed a cloak that didn't look aristocratic and learned to vanish into the mist like a girl with no title at all. I wandered Whitechapel and Clerkenwell, through the narrow alleys and gaslit streets that pulsed with secrets. I told myself I wasn't looking for her. I lied. I found her name whispered in taverns where women dressed like men and laughter was currency. I heard tales of a phantom thief, elegant and elusive, who left behind only mocking notes and empty jewel boxes. No one had seen her face, but one woman swore she had eyes like thunder and a smile sharp enough to cut glass. I knew it was her, and then one night I saw her again, not in the shadows of crime, but on a rooftop above a crumbling apothecary, sitting like a raven on the edge of the world. She was watching the city, legs dangling, arms resting on her knees. I almost didn't believe it. I stood across the street, hidden in the alley, heart hammering in my chest. What if she didn't remember me? What if I was just a silly, noble girl who had made a fool of herself in the presence of a real criminal? But then she turned, as if she had known I was there all along. Her gaze locked on mine across the night, and she smiled. Not the smirk she'd worn in the vault. Something else. Warmer. Fonder. I didn't run. I climbed the fire escape, fingers trembling on the iron rails, until I was beside her. "You're braver than I thought," she said, not looking at me. "Or more foolish," I answered, breathless. Still deciding. She turned to me fully, eyes raking over my borrowed clothes. "Lady Thornfield playing pauper. You wear rebellion well." "I'm not playing," I said, too quickly. She cocked an eyebrow. "No." I shook my head. "Not anymore." Amy studied me, quiet for a moment. "Why are you here?" I opened my mouth, but the truth was too raw, too exposed. So I lied. I wanted to understand why someone would risk everything for jewels. She leaned closer, voice low. "And did you?" "No," I whispered, because now I don't think it was about the jewels at all. Her breath caught, just slightly. "Careful, Catherine." My name in her mouth again, softer this time. I hated how much I craved the sound. "You shouldn't be near me." "And yet you're still here," I said. Her hand brushed mine. "It wasn't an accident." "I told myself I wouldn't see you again," she said, "that I couldn't afford to." "And yet you're still here," I echoed. A pause.
A breath.
Her fingers laced with mine. "I don't steal things I can't run with," she murmured. "But you're not something I can leave behind." The world tilted. The rooftops vanished. There was only the space between us, closing inch by inch until her lips were hovering over mine.
She didn't kiss me.
Not yet. She watched me. Waited. I closed the gap. Her mouth was fire and hunger and freedom and everything I'd never known I needed. When we finally pulled apart, her forehead rested against mine. "This is madness," she whispered. "Then let's go mad together," I said. She laughed, broken and beautiful. God help us both. But neither of us ran. Not that night. Not from each other. I saw her every night after that. Not always in the same place, not always for long, but enough to keep my heart racing, my blood humming with anticipation from the moment I slipped out of Thornfield House until I found her silhouette in the dark. Amy never said where she came from before London, and I didn't ask, though I wanted to. Her past clung to her like perfume, sweet and dangerous, and she wore it well. What mattered was how she looked at me, like I was something she hadn't planned on stealing but wanted to keep anyway. We met in graveyards overgrown with ivy, in taverns that reeked of spilled ale and forgotten dreams, on rooftops with broken tiles where the stars dared to peek through the soot-thick sky. She showed me a London I'd never known, a world of code names, hidden doors, and unspoken rules, where everything had a price except loyalty. And kisses. Those she gave me freely, though I could tell everyone cost her more than she let on. "You're going to get caught," she murmured once as I straddled her lap in a dusty attic above a shuttered bakery, her fingers tangled in the laces of my stolen dress. "Not by them," I whispered into her neck. "Only by you." She laughed, breathless, and I felt it. How much she wanted me. How much it scared her. But I didn't care. I was already drowning. What I didn't know was that the tide was rising faster than I could swim. It started with the paper. A headline in bold ink across the London Times: "Crown jewel thief strikes again." Another heist. A priceless necklace stolen from a private estate in Mayfair, one my father had attended just days before. I stared at the article until the words blurred, my breath shallow. Amy hadn't told me. And that was the first time I wondered what else she was hiding. Then came the whispers. At dinner, over lamb and sherry, Lord Withers muttered that Scotland Yard had assigned a new inspector to the case, a man relentless in his pursuit, known for turning cities inside out to find the rats. My father nodded gravely, mentioned how shameful it would be if someone within their own circle was aiding the thief. I nearly dropped my glass. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I found her again, sitting on the ledge of an abandoned church, her boots swinging idly over the edge. "You hit Mayfair," I said without preamble. She glanced at me, unbothered. "News travels. You didn't tell me." A pause. "Would you have stopped me?" "No," I admitted. "But I wanted to know." She sighed, pushing off the ledge. "I don't tell you everything, Catherine. That's not how this works." "Then how does it work?" I stepped closer, anger creeping into my voice. "You kiss me, vanish, steal from people I grew up with, and expect me to pretend it's all a dream? Isn't it?" Her voice was soft, tired. "A beautiful, impossible dream? I don't want impossible." "Then you shouldn't want me." She turned, ready to disappear again, but I grabbed her hand. "I don't care about the jewels. I care about you." Her eyes closed for a second too long. "And that's exactly why I'm dangerous." She pulled away, slower this time, but she still left. The next morning, I found a slip of paper tucked beneath the book on my windowsill. One sentence, written in her handwriting, sharp and slanted. "Meet me where we first met. Midnight." My heart stopped. The jewel house. The tower. She was going back. I didn't know if it was madness or some twisted attempt to reclaim control, but I knew one thing. If she got caught, she'd hang. And if I didn't stop her, or help her, I might lose the only thing that had ever felt real. I shouldn't have gone. Every rational thought, every ingrained lesson from years of finishing schools and strict governesses screamed that I should burn the note, pray for her safety, and return to the safety of silk sheets and controlled breathing. But I didn't. At midnight, wrapped in a dark cloak and moving like someone I no longer recognized in the mirror, I slipped out of Thornfield House and made my way back to the place where it all began. The tower loomed like a sentinel of iron and memory. Cold stone walls bathed in silver moonlight, the great fortress asleep, but never unguarded. I crept through the shadows, heart pounding, until I found the hidden door, the same one I had used that first night. It opened without resistance. She was already inside, standing in the middle of the gallery, not looking at the jewels this time, but at the empty space where the imperial crown had once sat. She turned when she heard me, and the moment our eyes met, something inside me clenched. Fear, desire, fury, all tangled together. "I thought you wouldn't come," Amy said. "I almost didn't. And yet here you are." "What are you doing here, Amy? Why now?" She stepped closer, slowly, as if approaching a wild animal that might bolt. "I needed to remember something. Why I started this. To steal. To survive," she corrected. "To hurt the people who built thrones on the backs of the poor. The people you dine with." Her voice wasn't accusatory, but it stung anyway. "You think I'm like them?" "I think you're trying not to be." I looked at her, really looked. There was something in her eyes I hadn't seen before. Not just pain.
Guilt.
Tell me the truth, Amy. She hesitated, and I saw the war behind her expression. Then she sighed. My mother worked in this very tower. A cleaner. No one ever remembered her name. One night, a nobleman thought he could do what he wanted with her. She fought.
He lied.
They believed him. She turned away, her voice tight. Love what you've seen so far and want to help me keep creating these awesome stories on this channel? Then subscribe and hit the bell. Your subscription supports the channel and makes sure you get more exciting stories. They hanged her.
Called it theft to justify it.
Said she tried to steal a brooch from a visiting duchess. I was 11. My breath caught. I'm so sorry. Don't be. Just understand. This place isn't sacred. It's a monument to the lies this empire tells itself. And the jewels? A distraction. A symbol. But some symbols need to fall. I reached for her hand. She let me take it. You could have told me. Would it have changed anything? Everything, I said. Because now I saw her not as a criminal or a fantasy, but a survivor carved from fire. And I wanted her more than ever. She pulled me into an alcove, hidden from the corridor. Her lips were on mine before I could speak, and I kissed her back like I might never get the chance again. We melted into each other, desperate, aching, alive. But then a sound shattered the moment. Boots.
Loud. Close.
Amy froze. They're early, she whispered. What? I heard a tip was leaked. Someone wants me caught tonight. It was supposed to be later. I was going to leave before. A trap? She nodded. Someone's closing in.
Who?
She met my eyes, jaw tight. Inspector Marlowe. Scotland Yard's finest. And worst. He doesn't want justice. He wants a spectacle. We have to go. But as we turned to flee, the main doors of the gallery slammed open. Lantern light poured in, and shadows surged forward. We were surrounded. There, a voice barked. Hands where I can see them. I looked at Amy, and for a second, I saw the panic she never showed. Not fear of arrest, but fear of losing me.
Catherine, she said.
Run. Not without you. You have to. If they know you're with me, I don't care. But she was already pulling away, already reaching for the smoke bombs in her coat. When the smoke clears, she whispered, run north. Third door on the left. I'll find you. Promise me. She hesitated, then nodded. I promise. And then the room exploded in white smoke and shouts. I ran. Not because I was afraid, but because I had to believe she meant to keep that promise. I escaped into the cold night, heart pounding, lungs burning, and waited in the dark, praying she would follow. The night swallowed me whole. I ran until my legs screamed and the cold carved itself into my lungs, until the tower's silhouette was nothing more than a ghost in the distance behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I did, I'd see them dragging her away. Or worse, I wouldn't see her at all. The fog was merciful that night, thick as wool and just as protective. I slipped into alleyways, through quiet courtyards and muddy paths, guided only by instinct and the pounding ache in my chest. Her voice echoed in my mind. Third door on the left. I'll find you. I counted every doorway, every creaking hinge. When I reached the third, I almost didn't open it. But I did. It was a storage cellar beneath a shuttered tailor shop. Empty, save for the scent of damp wool and mildew. I waited there for hours. Every creak made my heart leap. Every gust of wind outside felt like the footfall of boots. But she never came. When dawn broke pale and trembling over London, I was still alone. My dress was torn at the hem, my hair tangled and damp. But the worst was the silence. I told myself she had escaped in another direction, that we had simply been separated. But my gut churned with something colder. I returned to Thornfield House before anyone noticed I was gone. I crept through my window and sank to the floor, numb with exhaustion and fear. The world around me resumed its cold, rigid rhythm. Breakfasts with lace napkins and political conversations, charity events filled with false smiles, tea served with rumors. And among those rumors, Whispers bloomed like blood in water. They say they caught someone at the tower. A woman. Not just a thief, one of the great ones. The inspector himself oversaw it. Marlowe. Ruthless man, but effective. They say she might hang. I smiled through them all. I sipped tea. I wore the corsets. I played the role. But inside I was breaking. On the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. I went to someone I never thought I'd speak to about something like this. Lady Margaret Fairchild. She was everything a proper noblewoman should be. Sharp, elegant, untouchable. But I'd seen the way she watched other women when she thought no one noticed. And more than once, I'd caught her eyeing me with something warmer than propriety allowed. So I found her alone in the conservatory, where the orchids bloomed unnaturally bright even in autumn, and I said, "Lady Margaret, I need help. And I think you're the only one who might understand why." Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. "Go on."
I told her everything.
Every reckless detail. Her expression never changed, but when I finished, she exhaled slowly and said, "You poor, brave girl. I don't need pity. I need information. You need discretion. Which, lucky for you, I specialize in." She rose, her silk skirts whispering like secrets. "Inspector Marlowe's holding cells are beneath the old naval barracks on Holloway Street. He doesn't take his prisoners to Newgate. Not yet. He breaks them first. Privately." The thought of Amy in a cell made my stomach twist. "Can you get me in?" Margaret looked at me with something between admiration and fear.
No.
"But I can get you close." That night, I changed again. No longer the debutante in pearls or the girl in love beneath moonlight, but something harder. Something desperate. Margaret's coach dropped me 3 blocks from Holloway under cover of darkness. She handed me a key and a warning. "This opens a side door. I can stall the guard for 10 minutes. No more." I nodded and ran. The barracks were a grim relic, stone and iron, the kind of place where things disappeared. I slipped inside through the side entrance and found the corridor cold and narrow, lit by flickering gas lamps. Every sound was louder in the dark. Every drip of water. Every breath. I didn't call her name. I didn't risk a whisper. I moved silently, passing locked doors and empty cells until I heard a voice. Not hers. His. "Tell me again where you were going after the tower." A pause. Then another voice, low and hoarse, hers. "I wasn't going anywhere. I was waiting for someone. You've been clever. Untouchable. But even clever girls bleed, don't they?" A slap. I flinched. My hand gripped the iron bars of the nearest door. "I can make you a deal, Miss whatever your name really is. You give me the names of your buyers, your contacts, and I make this go away. A quiet cell. A quiet death. No spectacle." Silence. Then Amy's voice again, sharper now. "Go to hell." I had to stop myself from sobbing. Footsteps approached. I ducked back, hiding behind a rusted door as Marlowe stormed past, muttering curses under his breath. When the corridor emptied again, I crept toward the door where I'd heard her voice. It wasn't locked. They didn't think anyone would come for her. She was on the floor, wrists chained, lips split, one eye swelling. But when she saw me, she smiled like salvation had walked in. "You're a ghost," she whispered. "Or an angel." "I'm neither," I choked. "I'm just stupid enough to love you." She closed her eyes, as if the words hurt more than the bruises. "You shouldn't have come." "You promised me," I said, dropping to my knees beside her. "You said you'd find me." "I meant to." She looked at me, so raw, so broken. "I didn't want you to see me like this. I don't care what they've done to you. We're getting out. I can't walk." "Then I'll carry you." But the sound of heavy boots echoed again. Time was up. "I'll come back with help," I swore.
No.
"You won't make it past the gates twice. Listen to me, there's a ledger. Marlowe's. It has the names of every buyer he protects. He's not after justice, Catherine. He's protecting a market. If you get that ledger, he'll have no leverage. He'll have to let me go." "Where is it?"
His office.
2 floors up. Right side. Red door. You'll know it. I kissed her, gentle, trembling, full of all the words I didn't have time to say. Then I slipped away, back into the shadows, toward a different kind of heist. For her. The moment I left her behind in that cell, every part of me screamed to turn back, to drag her out no matter the cost, to raise hell until someone listened. But love, I was beginning to learn, wasn't always a flame. Sometimes it was a blade, and I had to use it carefully if I wanted to free her. The corridor narrowed as I moved deeper into the barracks, every step quieter than breath, every shadow a threat. The old naval building creaked with the weight of its own sins, and I clung to the only thing keeping me upright. Amy's voice in my mind. Red door. 2 floors up. Right side. You'll know it. The stairs groaned beneath my boots as I climbed. I didn't wear a dress tonight. I wore Margaret's tailored coat, dark trousers tucked into scuffed boots, my hair pinned beneath a flat cap. If anyone saw me now, they'd think I was a boy or a ghost. On the 2nd floor, the lamps burned lower, and I found it.
Red door.
Polished brass handle. A single nameplate. Inspector Elias Marlowe. I didn't knock. The lock was simple. I was my father's daughter, after all. I'd learned how to open boxes I wasn't supposed to touch before I learned to waltz. The door gave way with a soft click, and I slipped inside. The room was neater than I expected. Orderly. Cold. Every item on the desk arranged with obsessive precision, every book's spine aligned like soldiers. But there, in the top drawer, just as Amy said, a black leather ledger. I pulled it free and flipped through the pages, my breath catching with every name. These weren't petty thieves. They were lords, dukes, foreign dignitaries. Buyers of stolen artifacts, jewels, and secrets. Marlowe wasn't chasing Amy because she was a criminal. He was chasing her because she knew the game, and worse, she didn't play by his rules. I turned the page and found something else. A name I knew too well. Lord Reginald Thornfield. My father. My hands shook. There it was, in Marlowe's cramped script. Recipient of recovered sapphire pendant from the Duchess of Alveston job. Payment made in favors. Discretion required. I couldn't breathe. He had lied. He had known. He had profited. Everything I thought was safe, my family, my name, the house I'd grown up in, it was all built on the same rot. A noise outside the door snapped me back. A voice. She's still not talking? Marlowe. I had seconds. I stuffed the ledger into my coat, blew out the lantern, and slipped out through the side window onto the ledge. My hands scraped stone. My feet nearly slipped, but I climbed down fast and hard, driven by rage and something sharper. I didn't run this time. I stalked. I found Margaret waiting in the carriage, eyes wide when she saw my face. Did you get it? Yes, I said, shoving the book into her hands. There are names in there, Margaret. My father's is one of them. She stared at me, then the ledger, then me again. You're certain? Read it. Her expression hardened. This changes everything. Can you use it? I can ruin Marlowe. Quietly. Legally. But it won't be fast. She doesn't have time. Then we buy her some. Margaret reached under the seat and pulled out a pistol. A slim, gleaming thing. You'll need this. I stared at the weapon, cold and elegant. I've never shot anything in my life. You won't need to. Just look like you could. I returned to the barracks before dawn, this time through the back where the delivery carts rolled in. Margaret had sent word ahead to one of her footmen, someone who owed her more than coin. He unlocked the side gate for me and looked away when I passed. Inside, I crept through the maze of stone and steel until I found her again. Amy, still chained, still bleeding. But her eyes lit up when she saw me. Tell me you got it, she rasped. I nodded. We have the ledger. Margaret's moving against Marlowe as we speak. Then why are you here? Because I'm not waiting for his mercy. I pulled the key from my coat and unlocked her chains. She winced as I helped her up, her body trembling. You'll get us both killed. Maybe. But not tonight. I wrapped her arm around my shoulders, and we limped into the corridor. 2 guards spotted us. One shouted, I raised the pistol. My hand didn't shake. "Open the gate," I said. "Or I start firing." They hesitated. I saw the calculation in their eyes.
Young.
Nervous. Not paid enough to die. One of them reached for his keys. The gate creaked open. We slipped into the early morning air, cold and stinging, and full of life. I half-carried her to the carriage, where Margaret pulled us inside and knocked twice on the roof. The horses surged forward. We didn't speak for several minutes. We just breathed. Amy leaned against me, eyelids fluttering. "You're mad," she whispered. "Completely. You risked everything."
No.
"You're everything." She smiled faintly, then passed out against my shoulder. I held her all the way back to Thornfield House, not the front, but the gardener's cottage on the edge of the property, long abandoned. Margaret had arranged everything: medical supplies, clean linens, a doctor who didn't ask questions. As I watched the blood being cleaned from Amy's face, I finally let myself cry. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew what had to come next. If we wanted a life together, we'd have to burn the world we came from. And I was ready to strike the first match. She didn't wake for 2 days. The doctor said the wounds were mostly surface, bruises, cuts, a fractured rib, but it was the exhaustion that worried him. The kind that came not from injury but from enduring too much for too long. I sat at her bedside, barely moving, watching every breath she took as though it might be her last. The old gardener's cottage had become our sanctuary, hidden from society, from my father, from the endless thrum of London's lies. Only Lady Margaret knew we were there, and she kept it that way. She brought food, letters, updates, and the ledger. Always the ledger. It sat on the table like a loaded gun, pages brimming with names that could bring down empires or start a war. Each entry a dagger, and each dagger pointed at someone powerful. We could release it all, I told her one night, my voice low as I stared at the book. Print the pages. Let the world burn. Margaret arched a brow. And what happens when they burn us with it? I didn't reply, because I knew they wouldn't go quietly. These men, these families, they didn't fear the law. They were the law, but they feared scandal, exposure, humiliation. We need leverage, I said. A threat we can wield. Something bigger than the ledger itself. You're thinking like her, Margaret murmured. Good. On the third night, Amy opened her eyes. I was asleep beside her, curled on the edge of the bed, when I felt her fingers brush mine. Hey, she whispered. I jolted upright. You're awake. You look awful. You look worse. Still love me? More than ever. Her smile was weak but real. How bad is it? Bad, I said, but not hopeless. I told her everything, how I'd taken the ledger, how Margaret was helping, how my father's name was in it. Her expression shifted at that. You didn't tell me. I didn't know. Until I saw it. Catherine, it doesn't change anything. It changes everything, she said, voice tight. He's your father. He's a stranger who wears my name. And he's not the only one who deserves to fall. We were both quiet then. The truth sat between us, like another wound. I want to fight, she said at last. I need time. Take it. We don't have much. Then we'll take what we can. A week passed. She healed slowly, stubbornly. Every day she stood a little longer, moved a little more. And every night we planned. Lady Margaret secured us a meeting with someone dangerous. Her name was Lydia Crane, a printer who trafficked in more than pamphlets. Underground newspapers. Anonymous leaks. Scandalous truths the nobility prayed would never reach the public. We met her in the back of a chapel-turned-bookshop, beneath the hollow eyes of stone saints. Lydia was sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued, with ink-stained fingers and no patience for cowardice. You want to print a list of your own kind? She asked, flipping through the ledger. Risk everything for some dead servant's daughter and her rebel lover? Yes, I said. Because I'm not one of them. No, Amy added, stepping beside me. She's something far more dangerous. Lydia closed the book and smiled.
Good.
Let's ruin them. But printing the ledger wasn't enough. We needed a stage. A place where these names would do more than shock. They needed to collapse. And there was only one place in London where that was possible: the annual Winter Gala at Thornfield House. My home. My battlefield. You want to expose them in your father's ballroom? Margaret asked. The night he's expecting to announce your engagement to the Duke of Norrell? Exactly. You are terrifying. I'm in love. We set the plan in motion. Lydia would print select pages, just enough to ignite the flames. Amy would infiltrate the gala under the guise of a foreign countess. Margaret would plant the evidence.
And I
would play the perfect daughter. One last time. The night of the gala arrived dressed in frost and opulence. The chandeliers dripped with crystal. The orchestra played like they didn't know the building was about to burn. I wore red. Not the soft rose my mother would have chosen, but crimson, like blood, like defiance, like a warning. My father beamed as I descended the grand staircase, unaware that his empire was already cracking beneath him. Amy arrived fashionably late, arm hooked through Margaret's, dressed in midnight blue and diamonds that weren't hers. I felt her before I saw her. Her presence filled the room like a storm rolling in, graceful, silent, deadly. Our eyes met across the ballroom. She didn't smile. Neither did I. But we didn't need to. Everything between us burned in that glance. At the stroke of 10, Lydia's pages hit the streets. Servants slipped copies into coat pockets. Footmen handed them out like favors. The aristocracy began to buzz, then panic, then splinter. Whispers turned to gasps. Faces paled. And then Lord Reginald Thornfield's name echoed across the marble floor as a woman read the list aloud. Recipient of stolen goods. Complicit in black market dealings. Silent partner to Marlowe's corrupt investigations. All eyes turned to him. My father's face froze. Catherine, he said, what is this? The truth, I replied. Finally. He lunged toward me, but Margaret stepped between us. Touch her, she said coldly, and I'll ruin you personally. Amy was suddenly at my side, slipping her hand into mine. You said you'd burn it down, she whispered. You didn't say it would be so beautiful. Sirens echoed in the distance. Marlowe was already being arrested. The nobles fled the ballroom like rats from a sinking ship, and we stood in the center of the chaos, two women holding hands, untouched by the ruin, forged by it. When the flames finally faded, only one thing remained.
Us.
We thought it was over. We were wrong. In the days that followed the gala, London trembled. The papers ran bold headlines about corruption and scandal, about the fall of powerful names and the arrest of Inspector Marlowe. My father retreated behind closed doors, his title intact, but his influence shredded. Margaret received anonymous letters praising her bravery, and others threatening her life. Lydia Crane's underground press exploded in circulation. And Amy and I hid, not out of fear, but because the world we'd set fire to was still burning. We spent our mornings in the gardener's cottage, our afternoons walking along the river in borrowed coats and laughter that still tasted like survival. Every night, I traced the bruises on her ribs with fingers that remembered pain, then kissed the places where it no longer lived. We were rebuilding, stitching something real from the wreckage. But peace, I was beginning to learn, was fragile. And we had not yet paid in full. It started with the note, slipped under the cottage door in the dead of night. No signature. Just 3 words, inked in a hand I didn't recognize. She belongs here. I showed it to Amy. Her face went still.
It's him, she said. Who?
The collector. The name sent a chill down my spine, though I didn't understand why. I thought Marlowe ran the operation.
He did.
On the surface. But the real mastermind was always someone else. Someone who never showed his face. We called him the collector because he didn't just want jewels.
He wanted people. Talent.
Leverage. Obedience. Her voice was hollow. He recruited me when I was 16. Gave me a choice, starve or steal. And I was good. Too good. I started asking questions. He doesn't like questions. And now he wants you back. or dead. The next night, we returned to the cottage to find it ransacked. The ledger gone, the mattress slashed,
Our clothes soaked in something foul.
but no blood. Not yet. Just a message. You forgot who owns you. Amy didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. Margaret insisted we move to one of her safe houses, a townhouse on the edge of Kensington with reinforced locks and no servants. She paced as we explained everything. Why didn't you tell me about this man? She demanded. Because I thought he'd forgotten me, Amy said. He doesn't forget, Margaret muttered. People like that never do. Lydia arrived the next day with news. Several names from the ledger had disappeared.
Literally.
Gone from their estates, their offices, their carriages.
No one had seen them.
No bodies found. Just vanished. He's cleaning house, Lydia said grimly. Anyone who can tie him to Marlowe is being erased. We have to go public, I said. Put his name in print. We don't know his name, Amy reminded me. We never did. Then we find it. It became a race. Lydia traced bank records and coded correspondences. Margaret leaned on her contacts in Parliament, bribing or blackmailing those who had reasons to fear her. I read every page of what we'd managed to copy from the ledger, hunting for a clue. And Amy, she remembered. Faces.
Patterns.
Voices in the dark. She sketched symbols she'd seen on envelopes, remembered the scent of cigars laced with clove, the way one man had called her Little Crow. It was enough. Lydia found him. Lord Dorian Blackmore. A name that held no office but wielded terrifying wealth. A patron of orphanages, charities, public art. A ghost cloaked in benevolence. And beneath it the collector. He lived in a fortress of a manor in Hampstead, guarded by former soldiers and loyal dogs. Getting close was impossible, unless we were invited. He'll recognize me, Amy said. But he won't expect you. Her eyes met mine. You're going to offer yourself, aren't you? He wants something rare. Something he can't steal. He wants to collect. No, her voice cracked. Absolutely not. I won't actually go alone, I said. We'll plan it. Use his vanity against him. He'll kill you. Not if I kill him first. We staged the performance meticulously. Lydia forged a letter from an anonymous noble offering Catherine Thornfield as a willing ally, resentful of her father, eager to serve the new order. Margaret arranged for the letter to fall into Blackmore's hands. And Amy trained me. Every day. How to hold a blade. How to spot a poison glass. How to lie with my eyes. When the summons came, I was ready. The carriage arrived at midnight. I wore a gown of midnight silk, hair twisted like the obedient daughter I no longer was. I kissed Amy before I left. She didn't say goodbye. She just pressed a tiny blade into my palm and whispered, "Come back to me." Blackmore's manner was colder than death. Gilded corridors led to a room of mirrors, where he waited like a spider in silk. He was older than I expected.
Pale.
Smiling. "Lady Thornfield," he purred. What a lovely surprise. I believe we have interests in common. Indeed. You're tired of playing by their rules. You want power. I want protection. And freedom. And in return, loyalty. And what about your little thief? My heart stopped. What thief? Don't lie to me, darling. I see everything. He stepped closer. She was mine once. She'll be mine again. She's not a possession, I said. Everyone's a possession. Some just haven't been claimed yet. That was when the lights cut out. Gunfire. Screams. Smoke. Lydia's explosives worked. The chaos was our cover. I slashed at his throat, but he moved fast. Too fast. The blade grazed his cheek, but he struck me back. Hard. I hit the floor, ears ringing. Then Amy was there. Bloodied. Beautiful. Furious. You don't get to take from me anymore, she said, and drove the blade into his chest.
Once. Twice.
He fell with a gasp and a gurgle, bleeding into his own wealth.
We didn't wait to see him die.
We ran. Out the burning door. Into the cold night. Into whatever came next. We didn't speak on the way back. The carriage raced through sleeping streets, wheels slick with rain. London yawning like a wounded beast beneath the fog. Amy sat across from me, blood still drying on her hands, a cut across her collarbone darkening the blue silk of her stolen gown. I held her gaze, but said nothing. Not because I didn't have words, because I didn't trust my voice not to break. We'd killed a man. A powerful man. A man who had bought silence with coin and fear for over a decade. And we didn't regret it. That scared me more than the act itself. Margaret met us at the safe house. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She saw the blood, the dirt, the silence between us, and only said, "There will be fallout." "Let it fall," Amy muttered. But it didn't. Not in the way we expected. Blackmore's death was framed as an accident. His manor destroyed in a fire caused by faulty wiring, his body burned beyond recognition. His name vanished from polite conversation, like a stain scrubbed from fine linen. No investigation. No questions. Just silence. The machine was already moving to erase him. And with him, every last trace of what he'd built. But not us. We were still here.
Still alive.
Still holding the truth, like a blade between us. "So that's it?" I asked Margaret days later. "We just go on?" "You dismantled an empire, Catherine. Sometimes survival is the only reward." I nodded, but it didn't feel like enough.
Not yet.
Amy healed quickly, as she always did, like her body had learned long ago not to linger in pain. But something in her changed. She was quieter. She stopped sketching. She barely ate. At night, when I pressed my body to hers in bed, she held me, but there was a tightness in it, like she was bracing for something. "Tell me what's wrong," I whispered one night. Her voice was soft, distant. "You have a life, Catherine. A name. A future. And I have blood on my hands and a past I can't bury. What happens when the fire fades and all that's left is a girl who doesn't belong anywhere?" I touched her face, kissed the corner of her mouth. "Then you belong with me. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow. And the day after. And every day after that until you believe it." "What if I can't?" "Then I'll believe it enough for both of us." She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the war inside her. The longing, the fear, the love. But she didn't speak. She just pulled me closer and held on like I was the only solid thing in a world made of ghosts. Weeks passed. Slowly, things settled. Margaret worked behind the scenes to secure funds, identities, options. Lydia published a final piece, a quiet goodbye to the story, hidden in metaphor, wrapped in poetry. Amy didn't want a new name. She wanted a clean one. Not an alias. A life. And I wanted to give it to her. So, I made a choice. I went back to Thornfield House. My father was waiting. He stood in the study, hands clasped behind his back, surrounded by books that had never been read. "I hear you've been traveling," he said. "Resting," I replied. "Planning. And now you've come to what? Apologize." "No," I said. "To say goodbye."
His jaw tightened.
"You'd throw away your inheritance. Your name. For her." "Yes," I said. "And I do it again. You don't understand what you're walking away from. Don't I?" I stepped closer. "I'm walking away from lies. From silence. From a legacy built on suffering. And I'm not sorry. You'll regret this." "No," I said. "You will. One day you'll realize the empire you built was never real. It was just dust pretending to be stone." I left without another word. And I didn't look back. I returned to Amy with nothing but a bag of clothes, a key, and a question. "Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere," she said. "Everywhere." "Then let's begin." We bought passage to the coast. Rented a cottage near the cliffs. The sea roared outside our window like it had been waiting for us. We walked for hours each day, hands entwined, wind in our hair, salt on our lips. She began to laugh again. Draw again. Breathe again. And one night, beneath a sky thick with stars, I took her hands in mine and asked, "Will you stay?" She frowned. "Catherine, I've stayed through, no. I mean truly stay. With me. Not because you're running. Not because I saved you, but because you want a future. With me in it. She was quiet. Then she smiled. You're not asking me to marry you, are you? Not yet. Good, she said, pulling me closer. Because if you do, I'll say yes. And I want you to work for it. We kissed then, slow and full of promise. And for the first time, there were no ghosts in the room. Just two women, choosing each other. Not out of desperation, not out of danger, but out of love.
Real. Fierce. Free.
London smelled different when we returned. Maybe it was the ocean still clinging to our coats, or maybe it was that we were no longer running, no longer hiding, no longer carrying the weight of fear on our backs. The city hadn't changed, but we had. We didn't come back to start a war. That part of our lives was over. We came to bury what was left of the battlefield.
To put the ghosts to rest.
And to make sure they stayed buried. The air was colder than I remembered, and the sky pressed low over the rooftops, heavy with winter and smoke. We stepped off the train with nothing but one trunk between us and a single envelope in my coat pocket. Amy's fingers brushed mine.
She didn't speak.
She didn't need to. We were here for one last thing. The solicitor's office was small and forgettable, tucked between a tailor and a tea shop, the sort of place you'd walk past without noticing. Perfect for what we needed. Inside, a clerk greeted me with a bow and led us down a quiet corridor. The man who waited at the end had a face like polished stone and eyes that weighed everything. Lady Thornfield, he began, but I stopped him. Miss Thornfield, I corrected. I'm here to change the will. He blinked. Forgive me, your father is still living. Yes, I said, but I don't intend to be his heir, or carry his name. I handed him the envelope. Inside were documents. Legal. Binding. Margaret had helped. Amy had signed one too. We were choosing something new. A name neither of us had worn before. One we would make our own. We'll be traveling, I told the solicitor. We won't be reachable. Everything that was mine, let it rot. Or let it help someone who needs it. And if your father contests it, let him try. He nodded, silently impressed. Amy watched me with something unreadable in her eyes. Not fear. Not pride. Something softer. Something deeper. We left the building and walked through the city like we were saying goodbye to a version of ourselves. Past the tower where we first met. Past the gallery where her fingers almost brushed the crown jewels. Past the alleys where we first kissed, trembling with danger and desire. Do you miss it? I asked her quietly. The thrill. The chase. Sometimes, she admitted. But it was never about the jewels. I know. It was about not feeling powerless. And now, she said, slipping her hand into mine, I feel powerful in other ways. We stayed one last night at Margaret's. She greeted us with wine and wicked smiles, hugged us longer than she ever had before, and said, I hope wherever you go, you raise hell and kiss loudly. That's the plan, I said. Lydia joined us later, bringing a final copy of her paper. The headline wasn't about scandal. It wasn't about crime. It was about two women who vanished from a city built to erase them. The story was told in metaphor, in poetry, in silence between the lines. But it was there. We were there. When the morning came, we boarded a ship heading south. France first, then Italy, then farther, maybe. Amy wanted to see the deserts of Morocco. I wanted to learn to paint in Greece. We didn't know where we'd end up, but we knew it would be together. One evening, weeks later, on a balcony overlooking a sunlit square where music danced through the air, I turned to her and said, Do you ever think about how it started? She smiled. All the time. You almost stole a crown. And you almost stopped me. Almost. But instead, her fingers traced my wrist. You let me go. I didn't, I said. I followed you. She kissed me then, slow and sure, and full of all the things we'd survived. You know, she murmured against my lips, I've stolen a lot of things. But you're the only one I never planned on. And you're the only thing I've ever let myself fall for. Dangerous game, she said. The most dangerous. Worth it. Every second. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the square below glowed gold and crimson. We leaned into each other, two women who had fought the world to find each other. No more running. No more hiding. No more lies. Just a love forged in fire, sealed in freedom. And for once in our lives, the only thing left to steal was time. And we were taking all of it. Thank you so much for being here and for believing in this channel. If you feel in your heart